Chezi's empty chair.
I'll be right there.
Yeah, he'll be right here. He's probably getting tea. But while we're here, let me see.
All right. Right. Let me just get some light here. So, Ben.
How's it going, Chezi?
Your mother did not make it.
She will make it in 2 days.
Everything okay?
Yeah. No, everything's good. She just plans changed a little bit. She's gonna be here in 2 days, and then actually my brother's gonna come, so it's gonna be even more of a
party.
Very
nice, very exciting. I'm a big fan of family reunions, and it's been a while since they saw you, so I'm sure it's very, very exciting.
Nice.
Unfortunately, I had a little scare today. Well, still dealing with it, but and that's why when I thought, like, anyways, we weren't gonna stream today, I was a little relaxed. But somehow with the drive, I don't know what went wrong with my computer in my office or the computer in the house, and I got this new iPad, but it seems like I deleted like many notes over many years. So so that was I was frantically running around between like my office and the house right now, trying to like figure out, but it'll be okay. Ultimately,
it'll be okay. Trying to recover them now.
Yeah, I'm trying to recover them. I'm trying not to focus on it right now. I'm gonna be too depressed if I think about it. I'm trying to recover them, but all things happen for a reason. So I believe ultimately it'll be okay. All right. Anyone watching, if there are people watching, there of course are welcome to join us, participate. We're always happy to have people over. Where do we stop off?
I think this was the last one that we did.
Yes, right. We were giving examples how we should be bold like a leopard and light as an eagle and fleeing like a deer, and we were explaining the contradiction of not being haughty and not thinking much of ourselves, and how some of these traits contradict the previous Mishra number 19. However, we explained that as long as it's oriented and these traits are oriented for the good, then one could take not advantage of them, but utilize them for God's sake. Of course, there's of course many different explanations about. We spoke about how when the deer runs, it also turns around. It's also aware that the evil inclination is always after you, and you can't just rest on your laurels. We spoke about how, like the leopard, or you want to sort of take charge with a certain veracity with regards to the things you're going to do and how you're going to go about them, with regards to making sure to grab any mitzvah you can and take advantage of opportunities to do good deeds. We spoke about the eagle, how he elevates himself and he removes himself from the mundane and really focuses on the more spiritual elements as well. We got a little about, we spoke a little about so why this ends with a blessing, because originally this was the last Mishnah of Ethics of Our Fathers. However, a few more added on, plus a whole nother chapter, which is the chapter we'll be moving into, I believe, this week or next week probably. And lastly, which was just probably a later add-on, which is we learn, and famously Rav Kook says how the Gemara talks about, not Rav Kook, how the Talmud talks about the generation before Messiah is known to have a lot of it's very bold, is very has chutzpah, is very, what's the word in English?
I think they have it here as brazenness.
Brazenness, right? Exactly. They're very brazenness, and That's why he's talking over here, hoping that when he was writing this, that this was the generation of Messiah. So he also writes how, please God, the temple will be built very soon. So at the same time, while he's coming out against being brazen and acting in that way, he also recognizes and understands that these might be data points and indications to the coming Messiah. So it's been a couple of years since then. And the generation increasingly becomes more brazen, but hopefully now we really are, at least that's what I feel, that, a page in history has been turned. And please God, the Messiah will be here at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't say the blessing louder. You could have said amen. Next time I'll be more conscious of that. Okay. So we're moving on.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so let's scroll down to number 21. Which one is this? Ben Bag. Right. This is a famous song as well, if you want to listen to it later.
Ben Bag.
There's a song by a singer named Yaakov Shweki. He's a fairly famous singer. And he sings a song, Ben Bag. He happens to be a Sephardi Jew. However, he taught himself the Ashkenazi cadence. So when he sings and when he performs, people could feel seen, heard, and recognized. And okay. So Ben Bag Omer, Hafoch ba v'hafoch ba dechul ba, uba techazei v'siv uba leba, umane lo tazua, she'en lecha midah tova himena. Ben Haha Omer lepum tzara agra. Okay. Ben, this is in Aramaic, of course. Ben Bag would say, delve into it. For all is in it. See with it, grow old and worn into it. Do not budge from it, for there is nothing better. Ben Hey would say, according to the pain is the gain. Right? He wasn't like a promoter for like some sort of wrestling.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like it a little bit.
Right. Okay. So what's happening over here? So these two last Mishnahs, well, it's really one Mishnah, but it's split into two: the Ben Haha and the Ben Bag. They're written in Aramaic because Ben Bag, whose name was really Yochanan, and Ben Haha, which we don't know his name. Hey, we don't know his name. They come from Babylon, so they're also speaking Babylon. Another reason why they are speaking in Babylonian is because we are told that they were in these special names that they have. We were told that they were Gerei Tzedek, righteous converts, and this so they're coming from Babylon, born and raised in Babylon. So that's their native tongue, their mother tongue, and hence they feel very confident to speak in that language as well. But because during that time there was a very big danger for converts, right? So we hide their name, so to speak, right? Their name was Ben Bag or Ben Hey. There is a version that sees Ben Bag as the initials in Hebrew of Ben Ger Ben Gioret, the son of a convert and the son of a female convert. And so that's the initials in the name. Some saw the name as that Bag in if you translated the Hebrew letters into letters in Gematria, you get the letter you get 5, you get Hey, and if you do Ben Hey, that's also 5. And the attitude that this is a synonym basically. He would go either by Ben Bag or by Ben Hey, depending how, if the Romans were getting close, right, the name
the same person, meaning
right.
Yeah.
And they attribute either one of them or both of them to either contemporaries of or students of Hillel, the famous Hillel, who has been quoted saying, "Lepum tzara agra," the pain is the gain, right? And hafochba, right? Delve into it. Yep. So because they mentioned both of those, we assume that they were contemporaries or students of them. Okay, so now what are they actually telling us? We have this interesting delve into it. right? Or hafoch ba means turn it over. In the actual translation would be, so as the Chabad does over here, it's giving us a little snippet of like dive into it, get deep into it, but it means turn it over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So this is emphasizing the constant need for Torah study, and like you would have in the diligence that you would have or that you would apply when you're starting a business, right? So your study and research never stops, right? You're looking at your yearly quota, you're bringing in consultants, you're bringing in HR, you're doing all the moves you need to do to constantly make sure that this thing is moving forward and growing. So you turn it over and over, or you delve into it. I don't know why they use delve. I think turning it over and over to me sounds like a better translation. It's not just and the repetition is not just for memorization, as we have which is something custom when learning Torah, right? You're trying to memorize some of these things, but it also enhances your understanding, right? It's giving you, every time you delve into it, now I use the word, every time you delve into it, you are revealing new insights, deeper meanings in each review, right? So I get to know it. I get to solidify my understanding of it at a certain level and memorize that level. And then I get to learn deeper and deeper levels of the Torah as well.
Right.
And the Torah itself, obviously, we believe, it has infinite depth, right? An endless amounts of wisdom connected to it. So, and despite, right, centuries of study, there still remains room, right, for fresh insights and interpretations. And this is sort of stressing the fact that, the Torah living is like a renewing source of life, right? Like an etz chaimi l'machazikim, a live tree for those who hold on to it. So very much you and I right now are participating in the delving, in the turning over, right? This has been said many times before. People have learned this many times before, yet you and I and the 9 people watching us are all linking ourselves into this rich tradition of constantly learning, reviewing, and anytime there's new information, or anytime you have a new anecdote or a new idea, or just because you're a new person, new set of eyes dealing with this, there are new perspectives, there's new ideas, and there's new people engaging with it.
Right. Yeah. So it renews because there are people that are delving into it. It renews itself with every new person. I was also thinking about this. Like seems like it interacts, or this talks about an experience from at least 2 perspectives broadly, right? Like the first perspective that I can think of, let's say if you think about this as something that you already know a little bit. So here maybe the delving into it makes more sense because you delve into it, and like in the magic book here in the commentary, Lev Avot mentions like delving into it means going beyond the revealed portion of something, going into maybe the esoteric, so going deeper and deeper and deeper. So that's the delving into it. But also maybe if it's something that you don't understand, it kind of makes me think about like I have a printer cartridge over here, and if I didn't know what this is, I would go like, what is this? And I would like turn it over like all over and try to figure out what it is and how to open it and how it works and how does it. And then if I open it, I will probably need to figure out how to put it in. And so I will need to turn it and turn it again. So there's always this turning and turning and turning. And I've had many times in my life where I would look at something, and I'm thinking physically now, like even this cartridge, where I would try to work on it and figure out how it works for like a minute, and I would turn it over, and I couldn't figure it out. But then I would have if I'm motivated enough to fix the problem, then I would keep turning it over and over, even though I've done it before, but I will be like, okay, let's do it again. And then when I do it again, I'll finally realize, okay, this is the way that this is the way that it works. So there's very,
very much like a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
There's people that play a rush hour and then after 2 minutes get bored. And there's people like, you know what? It's a long Shabbat afternoon. I actually don't have anything to do. I'm going to keep on trying to solve this and see things I didn't see before, or be a little more patient. Or once I allow myself to, and this has more to do with, mindfulness and meditation, but once I bring myself to my center, right, potentially then I could actually start seeing more. And of course, taking care of your rest and your sleep and all those things are all very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
People talk, just to clarify, in our little corner, or this little corner, people talk about rumination, right? I'm ruminating, right? So this is very much like ruminating, going over the things, delving into it, turning it over and over and over again. And I would say that as far as esoterics, it's sort of built in, because as you turn it over, at some point, you're just going to go into deeper levels, right? So it's not necessarily like you have to go into deeper levels phase one, but if you keep on turning it over, at some point, you're going to get to all the levels that the Torah has to offer. However, I would say that rumination for the sake of rumination on other topics is not necessarily the healthiest thing, right? Me just thinking constantly about the fact that I have anxiety doesn't necessarily help my anxiety, right? Or me constantly thinking about the horrible things in the world. So not everything should you delve into it. Rather, obviously things like the Torah or other elements like that, I think are very important to delve into. And that's why I am very pro the conversation even in Christian worlds, and obviously in Muslim worlds, where yes, look into your scripture, look into your church fathers, see, learn, understand, so you could refine what it is, the divine messages that are in that I believe that are in Christianity and Islam. Only with delving through it will you be able to come out with those elements. Now, dechula ba, for all is in it, right? It's a big statement over here, right? So like we just said, aside from the fact that it's interesting and it's nice to learn, right? It's we are told and we are taught that it's encompassing all, right? Science and wisdom are all inside. If someone is dedicated to understanding the Torah truth and really striving to grasp each detail through this delving and turning it over, ultimately he becomes versed in a tremendous amount of fields. Now, I want to distinguish between it has a tremendous amount, which you could say it has everything in it, to it literally has everything in it. So do I think quantum mechanics is inside like the Bible? I'm sure that people go through Bible code, or there's someone that has if you look at this word and you flip it on its head, really it's talking about Schrodinger's cat. I don't know about that. Okay. I do know that the Torah, definitely for its time and even today, has a tremendous amount of knowledge in it. And I also believe that it has enough information in it where it could serve as a roadmap for more novel information that comes in today, which is, it doesn't challenge my relationship with God. So if it's a really divine book, why did he just not write in there about the double helix? And that's it. It would have been much easier. The Torah is written in a specific time and context. That doesn't mean it's not eternal, and that doesn't mean that we can't use it eternally. It just means that it's still, nevertheless, it was still written in a certain context and a certain time and space. And that's why even if we want to learn how to deal with AI today, I don't think I'm going to find a conversation about AI, but I might find concepts and ideas that could assist me in understanding how to deal with AI. But specifically with the wealth of fields that the Torah has, right? So if I could be studying the dimensions of the temple, just because we just had the last few weeks we were building the tabernacle. So the temple calculations and agricultural laws and mastering the lunar cycle. Maimonides got it wrong initially, but I'm saying figuring out the lunar cycles and astronomy and different animal defects. So all these things, if you are willing to become a master of Torah, you are definitely going to become a Renaissance man. Now, does that mean I'm up to date with all the veterinarian medicine out there? No, but it encompasses a tremendous amount, and definitely shows you how the Torah really is involved in every aspect of your life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of a recent kind of a discussion that I had with somebody about whether everything that was taught to or said to Moses on Mount Sinai, including the oral Torah, does that mean that Moses knew all the opinions of all the Mishnah and the Gemara? And I told him that I listened to something that I listened to a Q&A that Rabbi Bradowitz had, And from what I understand, Rabbi Bradowitz was saying more to the effect that it's not that we think that he knew all the opinions, like Abaya or anybody else held those opinions, but he knew all the principles that will create all of these opinions, that will bring all these opinions, that will make them elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim, right? So that was the knowledge, and it seems to me like what you were saying a little bit as well.
So this very famous Gemara, right? It tells us that God showed Moses every generation and its leader. And in this little time machine, they see Rabbi Akiva.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I told him this too as well. Yeah.
You spoke this. You mentioned this, Tim.
I mentioned this, yeah.
Right. Okay. So for the listener's sake, so in this time machine, God introduces him to Rabbi Akiva, and Moses goes into the study hall, and he sits in the 7th row. He's all the way in the back. There's a deep symbolism what the 7th row is for another time. He goes to the back row, and Rabbi Akiva starts teaching, and just in context, Rabbi Akiva was known to not only being like interpreting the text, but also interpreting the shape of the text, the shape of the letters themselves. And Moses is listening, and he has no idea what's flying. He's like, I don't know what they're talking about. None of this makes sense to me. And he feels very weak, right? Mm-hmm. He doesn't know what to do. And at the end of the class, someone asked, but Rabbi Akiva, how do we know this? He says, how do we know this? This has been a tradition. This is Torah from Moses from Sinai, right? This is where we got this. And when Moses hears this, his spirit perks back up, and he's happy about this. Mm-hmm. And this is sort of what you were saying, Rabbi Bradowitz was saying, and what I was mentioning over here, which is Moses, the principles were there, the fundamentals, the undergirding principles, the scaffolding was there, both the legal and the spiritual. Mm-hmm. And after many generations, we started, expanding and opening up. And as part of the delving into it and turning it around, it's become more and more robust. But ultimately, its core, its seed comes back all the way back to Moses. We see this also when people ask, did the patriarchs keep all the Torah, all the commandments, mm-hmm. as is custom to say? And it would be a little silly to believe that Isaac kept the Passover, right? Because if he kept the Passover, he would just tell his son, hey, don't get stuck in Egypt because it's not going to end well for you, right? In reality, they were embodying the principles of these commandments that later on we write out, which is also, above all, saying, the Torah has astronomy in it and the Torah has agriculture, but above all, the Torah is really, it's a comprehensive, it's this comprehensive divine teaching, giving us life, wisdom, deep understanding of the human soul, and it's a blueprint of creation to a certain aspect, a certain point, which is giving us these fractal patterns that repeat themselves constantly. Jonathan Peugeot obviously likes going into this, where you're looking at the flood as the flood, and then the flood as Moses being born, and the floods that we have today. So all these things there's a deep wisdom over here that seems to encompass almost every domain in our life. Mm-hmm. And that's why specifically Jews see themselves as the chimney cleaners, right? If the world is the house and all the humankind are the inhabitants, Judaism is the chimney cleaner, which is we have the most experience with this book, which teaches us the relationship and how to communicate with the divine. So we are there to clear out the chimneys so all the world could, of course, orient itself and connect to God in the quickest and most robust fashion. All right. Moving on to Uba Techeze, right? And see with it, right? So we just said for all is in it, and we just gave our explanation and our qualifiers for that statement, and then see in it as well. So what does it mean to see in it? To undercover, obviously, these treasures that are inside the Torah. It's not enough to just turn it over and over, which in theory could be like is still superficial learning, right? I'm reading it again and again and again. No, there's a deep analysis to it. And once I do this deep analysis, as in just turning it over is not enough. So the condition would be turn it over and over, and only then you'll be able to see in it, right? So in order to be able to get the language and feel comfortable with the jargon, it requires this turning over and over. Once you do that, you actually gain this special vision, right? This X-ray vision, well, not X-ray vision, but Torah vision or Torah knowledge that allows you then to discern the correct path, right? Once I open my eyes up by Torah, it illuminates the right direction to all things in life. But in order to be able to gain that vision, I have to put in the time and hours. I have to put in those 10,000 hours.
Right. It's almost like it can be perceived as the seeing it is almost an effect of turning it over, but it's also, I can also see it as like you need to perceive with it. You will perceive, like in my book, it says with it, you will perceive. That's the translation. It makes me think of like embodying it. Right. So first of all, you look at the things and you understand the concept, and then you have to experiment with it, right? Because you want to see how it feels, what it
And
does.
how do I apply it?
How do I apply it? So you have to take it on you in a more kind of physical sense and do this experimentation.
Right. So I mentioned this in the past, which is, seeing it would be in the Matrix. The whole movie, he's turning it over and over and over, right? Only at the end, when he actually looks around and then he sees all the code, right? Now he's finally seeing it for what it is. And then he realizes the second he sees it, I don't know if the visual, if you're seeing the visual I'm talking about, only when he sees it, Morpheus doesn't tell him now dive into Agent Smith and blow him up from the inside. Rather, he understands what to do with this knowledge, right? I can manipulate the code right now. And this would be true still using this matrix analogy. Once I'm aware of the sequences, and this is what a lot of the Kabbalists were doing, right? All, God's name of 72 letters. These sequences are very matrix-like of like, if I use this and I say this and my mindfulness is here, then I could start potentially manifesting the world around me and whatever that means, right? If I'm being aware of the divine presence, I'm aware of the other energies coming out from people, I'm aware of the connectivity I have with other people, and I'm also looking at things in front of me with what Torah purpose does it have, right? So I could look at this pencil and say, pencil for writing. And then I could also look at this pencil and see, like, what are the halachic ramifications for this thing? On Shabbat, can I carry it? Can I move it? Can I use it? Is it considered a pure or unpure? All these questions that relate to the pencil once I'm seeing things through my Torah goggles.
Right. That's the halachic man concept also.
Right.
Book.
Correct.
Very much that, yeah.
All right. And then we have Vesiv Ubale Ba, right? Like Balui. And like also Seva, Siv, grow old and worn in it, right? So what are we telling us over here? So grown old, right? So this is from the turning, right? From the constant turning I was doing, the delving I'm doing, I'm actually getting older by doing this and wearing it out, like we said, like right from like wearing it actually, like from constant wear of the Torah. So like a sort of like a wear and tear, so to speak. And off the bat, even we've seen this before in other places in Pirkei Avot, the difference between how a young person perceives the Torah and how an adult perceives the Torah. But this is reminding us right now that the Torah is not a young person's game. The Torah it's not exclusively for young people. Of course, even the older generation should still partake in this as well, right? And there's sort of two blessings in this statement. There's like a guidance to it, which is immerse yourself in this Torah and like age alongside with it, right? So you're spending your days in Torah study, and you also receive like a privilege of being like an old scholar, right? An old Torah scholar. So that's growing old together with the Torah. There's something beautiful. If we see an old ancient Torah scroll inside the ark, we don't look at that as being like, oh, that's that old one. There's a lot to it. There's a history to it. There's a story behind it.
Right.
That's also, like the guidance you're getting from it. And the blessing you're getting, obviously, is by constantly engaging in the Torah. You are wearing it out, meaning you are achieving like a fulfilled life from it, right? You're actually wearing it out, and you got to wear this beautiful 3-piece Torah suit for many, 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 many years, right? So it allowed you to be the best looking guy in town for many, 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 many years, because you are wearing out this outfit. And of course, because it's eternal, it's not going to start to fray. The strings are not going to rip. If anything, going back to what we said earlier, it's just going to become, if I was wearing it in the 80s and it was bell bottoms, as I grow with it, it itself turns into the skinny version. It just evolves with me as well, as long as I'm generally engaging with it.
Right. Yeah. And like the wearing it in is also like, when you have new clothes, or mostly like new clothes or new shoes, for example, like when they get older, they also they fit you better, right? They fit you. So it's kind of like a dynamic relationship that you have with the thing in itself, where it gets more worn out, but it also fits you better, and you
more
fit
personal.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And then we are told, right? Umina lo tazua. Do not budge from it, right? So never depart from it, obviously. And a Jew we have a covenant, right, with our sacred Torah, right? So it's not only like it's not just a recommendation, it's also a requirement, of course. So this we are obligated to never cease from engaging from the Torah and never abandon it. And now we say V'hagita bo yomam v'layla, right? We should be focused on it during day and night. And of course, also when we say the Shema, right? When I wake up, when I'm sleeping, I'm always engaging with this. So, but it's not limited to study sessions, right? It's not limited to me going to the study hall, which we've discussed many times about the merit you get from going to the study hall and studying in the study hall. But this is even attending to physical needs, right? If I'm eating, if I'm drinking, if I'm sleeping, it could always be considered as engaging in the Torah. And every action I do, as long as I understand that I have my halacha oculus and goggles on, then every step of my life becomes Torah study, right? So whether I'm putting on my shoes, the blessing I'm making on the food I'm eating, and like I said, I could be looking at this pencil and I could just be asking a pencil, or I could asking what are the halachic ramifications from it. I could, inside my new neighborhood, it could be like, oh wow, this new neighborhood is great. I could also start asking myself, is there an eruv around it, right? Where is the closest ritual bath? How do I engage with this neighborhood now from the halachic perspective? That doesn't mean, and of course the Torah wants me to, I could look at a shoe and be like, wow, these are a great pair of Air Jordans, right? I don't have to be like, the color red is like the color of the tabernacle. Like I don't have to constantly be in that place. Yeah. But there's an aspect, if I got those new shoes, right, which would be being grateful for it, making the shechianu bracha, right, making a blessing, which is for buying something new, appreciating what I got. Immediately by doing that, I'm creating that hierarchy of values. So there's the person that is waiting for hours and hours or days to get the new iPhone, right? And on the flip side, there's someone that gets the new iPhone and he likes the apps just as the guy that was waiting outside. But his first move when he gets the iPhone is to first make a blessing, recognizing that the reason I have this iPhone, yes, it's some money I spent, but I waited in line. But ultimately, the giver of all gifts is God, right? And that's very different from the guy that waits online forever. And like, that's what he's known for. And that's what he's proud of, that he spent all his life just waiting for this one phone, right? So every aspect of our life can be seen and should be seen through the prism of Torah. And hence we could participate in how is it in English? Right? Do not budge from it. right? I don't budge. So that doesn't, I could be passive in theory and not budging from it if my whole life is set up already to be living through these ecology of practices and behaviors that I take on that put me in this, into the Jewish context, into the religious observant context.
The Lev Avot is basically what you're saying. Even in well engaged in material activities, do not detach yourself from Torah. Allow its spirit to pervade everything you do.
Right, and as we said in the past, the Torah offers almost everything that life has to offer. The Torah offers as well, properly regimented in the proper place, but everything could happen. And in an extreme case of that, like we've said, even participating with seemingly pagan or very nature-based elements to connect to the divine and to try to transcend. But however, we have those things all oriented and only happening in the temple, right? So we understand the idea of the power that there is in blood, but we only do that in the temple. We don't take blood baths. We understand the power that there is in smell and incense, but we don't use the Asherah tree to start using for making some sort of incense. Rather, that happens in the altar, only inside the temple, right? So all those aspects, all life aspects can all happen, but they happen regimented properly and through the proper orientation. Same thing with, which is seemingly something that the world is obsessed with, sex and physical pleasure, right? So the Torah also allows you to have a very robust and beautiful and sensual relationship with your wife, but that doesn't mean every person on the world is on the menu. And it also means it's not happening every second of your life, right? We want to make sure that we're making this special. We understand the sanctity of such a thing. So I'm pro Torah, if someone was confused. All right.
And in general, this is the same concept. In general, this is the same concept of enabling constraints, right? Having the right constraints to make your life more meaningful and be more creative, whatever is kind of the endeavor that you're pushed towards. But I think that's kind of like the expression of Torah in this particular example as well.
Agreed. She'en lecha midah tova hemena. For there is nothing better. Right? Also, big statement over there. So, like we said, the Torah is not just a book of wisdom, even though it is also a book of divine and infinite wisdom. It's the study of Torah leads to action as well. There's a moral compass element to it, and if you really study it properly, it should shape your whole personality and improve your character traits. Now, this is true, you could say, about other divine books, so to speak, that they offer this as well. So I understand that also. Just we were there for a very long time, and again, like the amount of fields that it covers, and again, ultimately cross-referencing and re-referencing itself. So it's very, very, very impressive. Jordan Peterson's also working that, I think, showing how it's self-referential and how fundamental it is as well. Now, there's another element of looking at this, and some sages, I believe, interpret the midah, the which is like a measurement, that it's so vast, it's so deep, it's so long. So they're using that word measurement in different ways to describe the Torah. But there is nothing else that will benefit you as fully, right? So again, under the divine supervision, and like if you study with this, ultimately its ultimate plan will be realized fully, right? So sticking with this at the end of the day is the best benefit for you, right? There's working out, there's doing things like that, but this is it gives you the full sweep. And of course, built into it, you can be like, but I'm just studying all day. So we just said, it doesn't mean you're lying on your bed with a book open and you can't move, right? Studying Torah means you're engaging. Studying Torah means you're getting married, you're having kids, you're teaching your kid how to swim. You're doing all those things as part of Torah study and participating in Torah.
Right. But delving in it and perceiving through it, holding it. Right.
and it gives you, it benefits you fully, really, in all aspects of your life, both as a father, as an individual, as a single person, as a married person. It gives you everything you need and sustains you as such. Now we move on to Ben Hey, right? He comes in over here and says, according to the pain is the gain. Mic drop, and then he walks out of the study hall. That's what he was known for. And everyone looked around and was like, who said that? Like, is that Ben Hey guy? He's up to no good. Right. So we said he was also, we mentioned earlier about him being a convert. Now, so here we see that there is all the difficulties of living in the exile and being subjugated to other people. And all this ultimately is, in a certain sense, to test our sincerity, our desire for this covenant, right? And we need to see if we really have what it takes to fully engage with this, no matter what. Over all these generations, we are still making sure we are engaging into this. And we realize that that even the penalties that the Torah gives us for the different transgressions we could do, and the challenges that we have of living as a Jew, right? That's in front of us. And of course, this is coming from a convert in the context, right? He's saying, I know that I'm taking on this more difficult life, but ultimately, according to the pain is a reward, right? I could see the amount of effort I'm putting into this, and I could also see how it's transforming my life. I could see how I'm becoming more sensitive, how I'm becoming more spiritual, how I'm connecting more to the people around me. The fact that the Torah is asking me to engage with other people, it's asking me to see other people as equals or even better than me. All this does a tremendous amount of psychological benefit for a human. And we are aware of the effort and, again, the difficulties that entailed in taking on the yoke of the Torah, the yoke of the commandments. But we know that even though it's a hard path, we're looking at the marathon. We're looking down the line, and we know that it's worthwhile.
Right.
Any challenges, questions?
I don't think I have a challenge yet, but this makes me think about, first of all, one thing that I also remember talking about when I heard about this particular saying is that also from thinking about this from the angle from God's angle, in terms of him understanding that the things that are the most challenging if something is very challenging to us, then the reward will be appropriate. Meaning, if for somebody that grew up religious to keep the Sabbath is very easy, and for somebody that didn't grow up that way, for them it's challenging to even do two things in a very strict way, then there is a sense of according to the pain is the gain, also from the angle of God. So that I remember. And then I guess the caveat, similar to the caveat that you gave as well, of looking at this with in a healthy way. So pain is not it's not the perfect proxy for something being good. If something is painful for you, it does not mean that, if I just stick around, then I will get something good out of it. So being kind of like being healthy and smart about it, and understanding like what is exactly the challenge that you're going through, and if there is something beyond that, as opposed to just enjoying the pain in a irrational way.
Right. So I think that's a good point that you're pointing out, and reminds me to focus a little more on the fact that it's not necessarily about the achievements, right? When you get to the day of judgment, right? You're not being asked, what did you achieve? Rather, how much effort did you put into achieving those stuff? Yeah. And it's also to tell us that it's a pump up, right? Letting know all the Jews in the world that we know it's very difficult for you, but rest assured, right? It's there's an award, there's a reward in the end, but it's also letting us know that I'm not telling you the demand is first of all for every Jew. It doesn't matter if you're smart or young or old or a rabbi, you're asked to engage with this and realize that it's difficult. And like you were saying, that the reward is adjusted based on your individual capability, right? Your efforts, the circumstances you're in. So God and in his infinite wisdom is going to take all those things into consideration. It's not, oh, I went to prayer today, so that's 5 extra points, right? It's more has to do with the fact that you wanted to go, and it could even be the fact that it was a bigger deal because, like you said, it's over the hill and it's not right by my house. So for every person, there's going to be a different interaction, but ultimately we are being told to, everyone is being obligated to participate in this. And everyone's also being told that rest assured, you don't have to necessarily get to the finish line. Rather, you have to, this is a participation medal, so to speak, even though I'm against that concept in general for kids. Hashem, God is obviously very, very much allowed to give us all participation medals, assuming we participate.
Right.
Okay. Number 22. I see Rabbi Malot is here. Hello, Rabbi. You, of course, are welcome to join and correct me if I'm mistaken or misguided. Sandy, good to see you as well. You want to take this?
Yes, let's do it. So I think this is the last one, too, for this chapter.
Very exciting. So then we move on to chapter 6.
So, hu היה אומר, בין 5 שנים למקרא, בין 10 שנים למשנה, בין 13 למצוות, בין 15 לגמרא, בין 18 לחופה, בין 20 לרדוף, בין 30 לכוח, בין 40 לבינה, בין 50 לעצה, בין 60 לזקנה, בין 70 לשיבה, בין 80 לגבורה, בין 90 לסוח, בין 100 כאילו מת ועבר ובטל מן העולם. He would also say, 5 years is the age for the study of scripture, 10 for the study of Mishnah, 13 for the obligation to observe the mitzvot, 15 for the study of Talmud, 18 for marriage, 20 to pursue a livelihood, 30 for strength, 40 for understanding, 50 for counsel, 60 for sagacity, 70 for elderliness, 80 for power, 90 to stoop. 100-year-old is as one who has died and passed away and has been negated from the world.
All right.
Avot always with the great.
We covered many ages over here. Okay, hu היה אומר. So first off, we see all these ages over here. We generally live in a world where people like to say time is money, right? So I think here we're being told time is worth a lot more than just money.
Yeah.
Right? Time is also money, but time is something we should take very, very, we should consider very seriously. So we start with the 5-year-old over here. And we mentioned this earlier about how a child is like, it's like writing on fresh paper, right? Like ink on fresh paper, where nothing was erased. There's no biases that we have to start to correct. When I'm writing on the parchment itself, I don't have like my pencil doesn't skip because I'm not like, I didn't hit some old indentation that need to get fixed. Of course, there's a flip side to this, but right now we're just focusing on the child over here. So, right, don't delay the education for an older age, right? And specifically at a young age, the mind is clear, it's fresh. And there we want to start learning as clearly as soon as possible. I was just mentioning this to my wife right now, how my son was singing the song and my youngest daughter finished the verse, and my wife looked like surprised, like, did you hear that? And I said, I tell you this, there's a lot of potential there. And I looked at my wife, I'm like, you and I are not tapping into that because like we're people, we're busy, we're doing. I'm like, but if like you wanted like another language, like now's the time. Like she could do it. We're just not like pushing that on her right now. But you could see obviously with kids, the neuroplasticity is tremendous. And that's why really people should not be partaking with marijuana until the age of 25. because until then your brain is still developing. And definitely as young children, if they hit their heads or they have trauma, their brain still allows it to repair itself in a miraculous way at a young age. Now, just to be clear, we start over here at 5, and you could ask, what about 0, 1, 2, 3, 4? What's happening in those years? So those are the years which is also preparation for Torah study, right? Learning the letters, sequences, what the Torah concepts are. So of course you should be utilizing those times as well. It's not like from when he wakes up on his first birthday, you just show him the 5 books and be like, start reading this, right? We have to cultivate the land first. Ben Eser le Mishnah, right? So then 5 years have passed. He's been learning for 5 years already. Now he's ready to take on the Torah, right? So, he's ready to take on the Mishnah. And that doesn't mean, again, that from the age 10 and onwards, the child is ceasing to learn the Torah, right? This is not exclusive. It's not an and or. It's this and, right? So I've been studying just the Torah up until this point, right? My belly is full, so to speak, with this. It's not full. My belly I have a nice, good meal of this right now. Exactly. Now I'm ready to take on the Mishnah, and it would be on the contrary. Learning the Mishnah, and this relates back to the previous Mishnah we just said of delving into it. Now I have another toolkit to use when studying the Torah right now. Because up until now, from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I was learning the Torah, and all my insights, even if they're great, are happening all within the Torah sphere. Once I have the Mishnah, now I can add all the Mishnah's insights to the Torah I already learned and add on to that as well, aside from just learning the Mishnah, right? So in every new stage, right, I'm adding and I'm advancing to what I was doing. So I want to, and the purpose, of course, is to deepen and expand and enhance my understanding of what I'm participating in, of course. And just as far as the 5 years, this is generally like, it's arbitrary, right? I would say it's okay if it starts at 11 and it's okay if you start at 4. This is the general time it takes for someone to move to this like next life phase, so to speak. And of course we see this as kids. My 10-year-old, I would say, at times is more mature, and his time is less mature than the 10-year-old. I don't know, at the time of the Bible, it could be at the time of the Bible, at the time of the Gemara, when I'm a 10-year-old and I know I need to be helping my dad with cattle outside at the crack of dawn. It could be that those kids were like a little less, a little more mature than the kids we have today.
There's something that says here in the commentary in the book, that it says, today, however, because in our books of scripture the words are vowelized and can therefore be read without the aid of a teacher, children do not need to master scripture at a young age, and since they can learn it on their own as they grow.
Right, because all those kids that are always coming home and being like, Mom, no, I don't need to watch this new episode of Pokemon. I'd like to read the Gemara for myself. So yes, I should say it has to do with also the house, what they see their parents doing, right? So this is not to toot my own horn, of course, but my sons know that there's many, many books in the house, that their father's always reading a book, that his father's giving classes. So that is something that they want to engage in and they think is cool, at least for now. That doesn't mean that if I offered my son the book of Judges that I bought him and a new Batman comic, that he's not going to take the Batman comic, right? He's still like very into that. However, he does know that if I come home and I say like, let's learn something, let's read something together, he knows that what I really mean is I would love if you and I could learn Torah together. And he understands that, and that's what he feels. So like when he senses that, he knows that this is a time for that. Obviously on Shabbat, it's automatic for him, and he knows when we're going to the synagogue. He knows he's taking his prayer book with him, and he's taking his kids' Bible study, or his kids' Mishnah study, or his kids' halacha study book that he has with him, and he understands that that's part of the engagement that he wants to partake in.
Yeah. Yeah, this makes me think, just to go back also to
Sure.
the comment about, the 5 years, meaning, or like, when can the children learn it,
Yeah.
the kids learn it. Makes me think about also looking at the way this is structured, is that this is, and the commentary here that I'm reading, is that it really tries to emphasize the fact that each one of these levels is almost like a tool or a key to the next level. So it's like, learn the basics, the foundations of Mikra, of scripture, and that will allow you to start touching on the Mishnah in a more profound way. And then when you do learn the Mishnah, you will be able to act more profoundly, or engage more profoundly with the observation of mitzvot, and then more profoundly, right? So it really kind of touches, all of those are interlinked.
Most definitely, both from, like you just said, that 5-year period of like my 10,000 hours of, or my gaining the mastery of that element, which allows me then to access the next stage.
Yeah.
And of course, there's also a physical, biological, psychological advancements as well, right? Because as a 5-year-old, it's going to be very hard for me to conceptualize, the chariot, right? And what that means. And obviously, and even if I'm a 13-year-old, or if I'm a 15-year-old, if I don't have the words or the tools, not only the neurological or mental capability to handle that, it's also, do I have the general know-how of how to code properly? Ben 13 lemitzvot, right? The famous bar mitzvah age for the obligation to observe the mitzvot is the age of 13, right? So during my years of study, I eventually become a man. And once I become a man, I'm obligated in the 613. Of course, not all 613 are relevant to every person, so it's not all 613, but generally the 613 commandments of the Torah. This is happening in the midst of the child building his personality, right? So there's still room and there's still place to continue learning and improving. But from this age of 13, I'm already responsible for my actions. And I'm obligated to observe the laws of the Torah, and I'm considered a grown man. There's a caveat to that, which is karet, which is like the heavenly decree of death from God, is only relevant. When I'm older. It's not relevant when you're 13 years old. And then even when you're in an older age, it's only relevant at night. But the Torah was also still being understanding while we're still seeing you as a man. Nevertheless, and you are responsible for the mitzvot you do and the transgressions that you do. Nevertheless, being punished by God by a heavenly decree, God is going to be more understanding at that age. I should just point out something that I discussed with the Bnei Noach, the Noahites, which is when Noahites, the question is, when do Noahites take on keeping commandments, right? Whether it's the 7, that is, it's actually a much larger number, or let's say the close to the 100 that derive from the 7, or other things that they want to take on. At what age is that appropriate? And the answer to that is that it really depends on the context and where you're coming from. In our tradition, it's 13, but I could also say, historically speaking, right? Like we were saying, if I'm dealing with a cattle at my dad at 13, you could bet that 13-year-old is already a lot more mature. I would say in the States, when you have kids like still watching, I don't know, whatever kids are watching today in America, and you see these college students over there, I don't know if necessarily 18 is also ready yet. So it could be in Bangladesh, the age is going to be 13 for a Noahide over there. And it could be that if you live in LA, you're going to decide to take on commandments when you're 21, right? When I'm done with those crazy years. So we need to also be, to the Noahide specifically, they need to be cognizant of the level of maturity that the child's in. Specifically going back to in Judaism, when this is very much part of the structure, part of the culture, then there's an element where definitely in observant or more traditional homes, there's a sense where the 13-year-old boy that's taking this on is aware, and it's not like a movie like Today I Am a Man. But there is that sense of responsibility that the child takes on. Of course, they could still be immature, and that's why we have that little loophole that God himself is going to be a little more understanding with us, a little more patient as well. We should also mention that at this age, there's also the hormonal developments, the physical developments, and spiritual developments that the kid is going over as well, which allows him to start partaking in these commandments, right? So like there's something
force him to make it more necessary for him to start being obligated to observe certain mitzvot. Yeah.
And as my personality starts to develop, right, that's very much when I need the Torah now to assist me. When the 5-year-old hears about it's an etz chaim lamachazikim, right, it's a live tree for those who hold on to it, it doesn't mean anything. I can't actually apply that. Even if I memorize it, I can't apply it. As a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 50-year-old, these words, I could start understanding these words on a deeper level, and they could actually assist me into building and guiding me properly.
Mm-hmm.
Once I'm done with my bar mitzvah, it was a success, and I got some nice checks. 2 years has passed, and it's time to study the Talmud, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, the Mishnah were the oral Torah teachings and understandings that we had expanding on the Torah itself. The Talmud is the teachings, discussions that were all being had with regard about the Mishnah itself as well. A very, very robust conversation. If you study a page a year, it will take you 7 years. A fascinating piece of work. So again, after we dedicated 5 years from the age of 10 until the age of 15, studying the Mishnah, now I could take on, of course, the Gemara, right? And like the Mishnah, right, this was also, of course, passed down orally through different generations, right? And of course, there's the Jerusalem Talmud, and there's the Babylonian Talmud as well. But another reason why it's the Babylonian Talmud is from Balal, which means to mix, right? And the Talmud, and like I spoke about this little corner, is a mix of scripture, Mishnah, Gemara, philosophy, Agada, Midrash. So it's very, very rich as well. And this, of course, it's studying this, right, with all these aspects that it has, deepens, of course, my understanding of the scripture, of the Torah. It deepens my understanding of the Mishnah that I was just reading, of course, as well. And here, too, it allows me to move on to another stage without abandoning my previous stage. And very much in the Gemara, there's a joke. There's this Bible that is made out of only Bible verses that show up in the Gemara, which is actually it's a tremendous amount of the Bible is quoted in the Gemara. But the joke was that like anything that's not quoted in the Gemara, like what, I don't need it, right? But the attitude is that when studying Gemara properly, you are automatically engaging both with Mishnah and with the scripture and with the Torah itself, because how it's built and how it's structured. Yeah. So not only should you not stop studying specifically Torah or specifically Mishnah, but with Gemara, you're automatically studying all those things intertwined because of how it's built, how it's written. After a few years, 3 years, the famous 18-year-old is ready to get married. So just off the bat, this is a general term. These were different times. Some people say it's later. There's people that are still in many communities, they push this. So that's why in Orthodox communities, specifically ultra-Orthodox communities, people get married fairly young. I don't know about 18 anymore, but 19, 20. There are pros and benefits to this. There are cons to this. Generally speaking, one should do so responsibly. And responsibly means that someone is mature enough to take on such an engagement.
Right, to make that decision.
That doesn't mean, you have to fully know who you are. There's something about growing and manifesting who you are together with your wife, right? It's no longer, my wife's name is Jenny. It's no longer Chezi or Jenny, but it's Chezi Jenny. It's one unit, very much going back to the androgynous articulation of what Adam was before the split from his wife, right? Going back to that unification, so to speak. But again, knowing who you are Of course, there are financial requirements one needs to take on. Yes, God provides. However, one should not be reckless, right? Jumping off a roof doesn't mean God's going to provide a parachute on your back if you did not prepare accordingly. So there's getting married, then there's deciding to get married and have 4 kids right away. So these are things that people need to take into consideration, of course. And everyone, it depends on the context. It depends who they're marrying. But that was just the general line about getting married at 18, that our viewers or listeners should realize that this is not, while this is something that we still get married very young culturally, this is not a commandment to get married at the age of 18. Again, the interpretation of this varies based on the community you're in. I got married at the age of 23 or 4, which is quote unquote like later in life. Obviously, in a secular world, that's still considered quite young. My brother got married at the age of 19. Right. So there's these things that people need to take into consideration. My brother and his wife lived in a caravan for a few years and lived in a very, very humble life for a time. He's since turned his life around. Right. So now just as far as what we actually learn about 18 and getting married. So at this chapter of someone's life, it's in theory, as an adult, it's time for you to take this Torah that you learned, right, and establish a home. So you could get to that next stage of leading a complete life. One is there's part of the 613 commandments, right? Marrying someone, having children. And there's the element of only then can I actually start engaging with God on another level, right? I haven't loved a woman yet. I don't know that aspect of the relationship between me and God. I haven't loved a child yet. I don't know that element. I haven't even argued with my wife. I don't even know that kind of pain yet. So if I want to engage at a deeper level with the scripture and the Torah and the Mishnah, of course, I'm going to have to also take on all these experiences of life. One, which is quite substantial, is, of course, marriage. So we want to get
reflects the general theme, I feel, of today's discussion, which is talking about the enabling constraints. Picking up these things, like you mentioned, like a marriage. Even if you don't know who you are fully, the person that you are going to spend time with, you are both going to shape yourselves into something together, and through each person's biases, right, strengths, all those different things, that is going to create that unique creature that you as a family are going to be.
I should just mention on that note that this is why when in the dating world, when an older man is dating a younger girl, one needs to be cautious about that. You of course shape each other, but a 28-year-old going out with, let's say, a 20-year-old or a 22-year-old, he is very much set in his ways. And she is still very much in being molded stage. And one has to be very careful that the molding is being done with you and not to her. Right. It can be very convenient for an older man, right, to decide, like, you know what I really like is this already. So I'm going to just make sure I could lovingly manipulate my wife into doing X, Y, Z. And that is something that's possible. And one needs to be careful about that. Again, that doesn't mean it's not wrong for your wife to want to adapt something that you do. Yeah. The question is if it's coming organically, or that's something that someone could potentially take advantage of, even not necessarily for malicious reasons, just for not really understanding the dynamic of a proper and healthy proper relationship. I should just mention there are verses that, I can't remember the exact verse, or it's in Psalms, though it might be in your magical book. How about how a groom leaves his canopy, and there's a play over there with regards to the age of 18. So there too, there's just an example. But nevertheless, I would say, even if it's just for the study of Torah, it would make sense to potentially postpone the age of 18, because it could be that at the age of 18, it could be that he's mature enough, and it could be that he's wise enough, but it could be that the amount of Torah he learned is still not, right. It's still not enough for him to take on such a responsibility, specifically when marriage, and rightfully so, shifts the focus. So if up until that age, it's very much, the Torah study is in the study hall. Once they get married, a lot of that Torah study, like we said earlier, is going to be more in life experiences, right? The fact that like I'm now going to pick up my kid from kindergarten is me putting in the time and effort and raising my kid. And that's another commandment, right? But it's not going to be me sitting down and studying necessarily, because I'm deciding now to engage in a different part of my life that is demanding from me. And I might not have that time to just old school study from the text. And it might be wise to spend a little more time doing that. And that's why in Israel, generally speaking, most Orthodox Jews either after high school go into a year or two of study and then join the army. They either do a 5-year program that includes army. But the idea is to study as much as you can, or have that uninterrupted period of study before you take on other stages of your life.
Yeah, which relates beautifully to the next milestone that you should care about.
So, Ben Esrim Lirdof, and in English, I'm sure they give us the to pursue, and here writes to pursue livelihood. In Hebrew, just says 20 to pursue, right? And of course, we have to explain we're not just pursuing money; we're pursuing a livelihood, right? Well, some people say the reason the Mishnah doesn't mention what it is, it's to it's to let you know it's justice. It's a sense of urgency. Like, start pursuing. If you haven't gotten married yet at the age of 18, you should start pursuing. You should feel rushed. The clock is ticking, not the biological clock, but the spiritual, halachic, your life clock is ticking, so to speak, right? So that's why they kept it sort of gray. Now, someone that did get married at the age of 20, at the age of 18, so by the age of 20, seemingly, right, he is already, at that time for sure, with there's no pill, right? There is definitely a family. Hopefully, if everyone is healthy and everyone is okay, there's a family, and he has to start supporting his family as well. So he has to actually take on a livelihood so he could sustain his family, and of course, try to find a balance between two of these things, right? And at times, pursuing the job, it within itself can be considered Torah study. Not in all cases, but also itself could be considered Torah study. Now, there's another sense, which is, like I said earlier, when I said 13, the child is not yet responsible, or he is not punished by heavenly decree. By the age of 20, there's a sense where that actually now starts happening, right? So he waited for us to repent until that age, but now it's time for you to start to pursuing this proper way of living, right? Because now also on that end, you are now being looked at through a microscope, and God is also judging you for those things that you're doing, right? So you had your wayward years. Now it's time to actually focus up and start acting properly. And lastly, I would say the pursuit, and I like this interpretation the most, the pursuit is pursuing after the actual commandments and mitzvot, which is, I had now 20 years worth of Bible, Mishnah, Scripture, Talmud. Now I need to do something with it. It's time to me to fully embody that. Go out to the market and actually try to make the world a better place. Seize mitzvot, commandments when you can. So it's a treasure of ours, right? So you should go out there and get after it at this point.
Yeah, it's also almost like an acknowledgement, and I'm taking a little bit from the commentary here.
Sure.
It's an acknowledgement that the pursuit is inevitable. Whether you're going to pursue something or not is not the question. You are going to pursue something, and it might be directed at something that is not Torah, right? It might be something that is directed by your evil inclination. So it's almost like a call for you to start, like if you haven't done anything if you haven't done something like until now with a passion, now you need to figure out what your passion is, because you want to fulfill that need that is going to happen now. So figure out how to do that, and like you said, take on all what you've learned until now and put that into action.
Right. So this, in TLC terms, right, this is very much, remember, embody, right? So like there's only so much you could be spending time on the live streams. At some point, you need to go out there, touch the grass, engage, pursue this new, with this new wisdom that you have. You actually want to now manifest it out there.
Yeah.
Ben shloshim lekoch, for strength, right? So this is when someone reaches his physical peak, right? The peak of his physical strength at the age of 30. We learned this also from the Levites, that at the age of 30 they began to serve in the oil mohed, right? In the tent, in the desert, and eventually also in the temple, right? So the Levites, their role with dealing with the tabernacle, with the Mishkan, also involved like physical work. It's taking it apart, carrying all the pieces, as we know of, and every time they move from one place to another in the desert, it's setting them up and taking it back apart. Mm-hmm. And this was very physical work, which was also difficult. So this is also another indication with regards to that age, right? There's another sense, which is that you, at that age, because you have the most physical strength, that's the most time to utilize it for the service of God, right? That's when you want to be taking on these biggest challenges of your life, because you are physically in the best place to do that as well. Now, there's also, from like a physical perspective, that I'm starting to reach also my spiritual strength at this age as well. And I can now start influencing others, right? So up until now, I was just accumulating this information, like we said earlier, for myself. Mm-hmm. I learned from others, and I pursued like my own needs. But at the age of 30, I could start giving that on to others, right? I could start discerning a little better. I could start giving some classes. I could start sharing this wisdom as well. Because again, I wouldn't say it's the peak of your spiritual, let's say, intellectual capabilities, but there's enough there for you to start playing around with these ideas in a different capacity, so to speak. And of course, like we said, right? Even when I'm teaching, I'm also still learning in my own sense. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else about that, by the age of 30 specifically. I believe that is it, unless you have something in your magical book, or at least that's what I remember. Of course, if you have any insight, I'll be glad to hear.
No, nothing to add on that one.
All right, so 10 years passed. I've been a good dude. Physically, I was okay. I have a Peloton, so like even by 40, I'm still doing all right. So this is Bina, right? The age of understanding. Right. So what am I, and as Rashi says, like, what is Bina? What is understanding? That I could, lavin davar mitoch davar, which is, I could infer one thing from another and decide accordingly. Right. So I could look at one thing and then I could discern from something else. I could extrapolate. So this is like a much more advanced level of rationalization and mental capabilities. Right. And I'm at the peak of my understanding, seemingly, at again, symbolically, at this age. So here, definitely it's time to, once I've received Bina, I definitely should be teaching others already at this point. Which could, again, it's a positive feedback loop, right? I get to gain knowledge as well when I'm teaching as well. And this is why famously we also have at the age of 40, when you could start studying the Kabbalah, the mystic teachings of the Torah, at the age of 40, right? And again, we know that the Ari was 38 when he died, and he clearly was very, very deeply immersed in the Kabbalistic teaching. So that's why this is not written in stone, so to speak, but this is a general guidance, right? Which is, by the age of 40, you pursued a physical career. You played around with your strength. You've done already teaching. So now is the time where you could start delving into these deeper levels of Torah, which would be another part of your delve into it, right? You can't always, we can't ask the 13-year-old to delve into this mystical world at that age.
Mm-hmm.
Ben chamishim le'etza, right? So he's 50 for counsel, right? So at this age, what does that mean that I'm reaching the age of counsel? So I have my many years of study. I've also had my at least 10 to 20 years worth of teaching as well. So I'm fully cognitively aware of what's going on around me. And my senses have been fine-tuned and sharpened, right? So I have, with my robust arsenal or my toolkit, right, I could give actually now very good advice and insight. Notice that in 30 and in 40, we were saying they should teach. We weren't talking about insight though, right? That's like a different level, which now I'm teaching a class. I don't know who you are specifically, or I don't necessarily know if I'm going to teach what's the best way to teach Ben or best way to teach Chezi. The 50-year-old can discern, can notice those differences, could actually give me solid advice about many things in life, right? Because he's participated in them. And now, like we said, someone could be wise even at a younger age, and there's still the dimension of time that's required to give like useful advice, right? So like I would say that there are people in the TLC that seem very, very wise, and they are very wise. Yet they still have no experience what it is to send off a kid to college, let's say, or marry a child, or have a grandson, and that's why there could be a guy that jumps onto a live stream, and he might be less articulate than Luke, but he might have a much more richer lived experience and wisdom that he could still share for us nevertheless. And of course, we're being told if from the age of 5 you are doing the right moves, you also have wisdom, spiritual wisdom, physical strength, all those things you've accumulated over the years. So that's why it only makes your counsel and your insight all the more better.
Yeah.
Now, he would advise, of course, he should advise himself, obviously, and the advice for himself also, before you start running to advise other people, and we mentioned this last week, if you're wise enough, then make sure you're wise enough to realize that you still didn't escape the evil inclination, right? The wise one would be like the deer that knows how to turn around. So make sure that if you got to that position of being wise, to build yourself more relevant safeguards at this age as well, right? That battle is never over.
Right. So the guidance applies both externally to other people, but internally as well to yourself.
Right. So there is a famous parable, which is a man he lost his way in the forest, and he's looking everywhere, and he's looking, and evening begins to fall, and he's still walking. He has nowhere to go. He doesn't know how to get out of there. And suddenly he bumps into a person that he sees coming towards him. And this person has like long hair. He's all disheveled. Clearly, he's been there for like a long while. And he asks him, thank God I met you. Maybe you could tell me how to get out of here. And the guy tells him, if I knew how to get out of here, I wouldn't be here. What I could tell you is where not to go. Right. And that's the fact of there's that lived wisdom. Right. That doesn't mean he knows all the answers. But nevertheless, because of the amount of time he spent in the forest, aka in the world, he still could give me a lot more information. Where is it dangerous to go? There are snakes. There are pit holes. So we could see how to find the path out together, but you should heed my advice where not to go.
Yeah.
Ben shishim lezikna, right? Again, I don't know how relevant this is anymore. 70 for elderiness, right? He's older over here. Oh no, sorry, 60 now, 70.
Yeah,
70. Yeah, okay. I'm not. What is that word?
I think I don't know if it's. Let's look it up. Why assume?
That's what I'm doing right now. Sagacity.
By the way, in terms of time, I didn't notice the time of it, but I have about 10 minutes for time management's sake.
How long do you have?
10 minutes.
foresight, discernment, a keen perception.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 10 minutes. Yeah, I think we could. Okay, we'll plow through the next 40 years quickly. Okay, so 60. Okay, for this keen in Hebrew it's zikna, but it's this discernment, clear perception, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here even more, his in theory, his physical and sensory strengths are starting to weaken. Right, he's not as strong anymore. But there's a sense where you are still doing your soul searching in a certain sense, and you are starting, like it says over here, as far as discerning, you've done years of soul searching and years of contemplation, which allows you to start preparing for the future, understanding how things are going to unfold in a better way. You have enough data points to start painting a picture of what's in front of you.
Yeah.
And you start thinking about how the end is not near, but the end is nearing, right? And you start preparing your life in a different way, right? So as my physical strength starts to leave me, right? And that's why we also asked, so al tashlichenu le'et zikna, right? Don't leave us to become old, right? There's a sense where zikna also means zekana, which means this has been acquired, right? So I've managed over these years to acquire a tremendous amount of knowledge and spiritual knowledge as well. So 60 is a transition when you realize your limits and start focusing more on your discernment, your foresight skills because of the stuff you've studied.
Right. It's interesting because traditionally I would think, or just like the thing that people say is that when you get older, your cognitive abilities in a very obvious way decline.
Right.
But like we mentioned here, since your body itself, your physical body your new physical strength is declining specifically, then just like a blind person whose hearing is much better than the normative person that has all of his senses, then for a person that's older and their physical body, it's not something they can rely on. Now they need to rely more on their cognitive abilities in kind of like this paradox.
Well, it's rely more and also understanding they no longer need to focus about like, when am I going to get this raise, right? The focus is different right now, which is allowing them, again, like I said, to start painting a picture of, what is the proper advice to give my kids? How do I want to make my way through right now through life? And what are the things I want to be focusing on?
Yeah.
In the age of 70, les seva, to elderliness, right? So famously, King David dies at the age of 70. He also says how the age of 70 is that's the shnot adam, that's the years of a man has. He has around 70 years, and anything beyond that is a gift. Of course, with the advancements of AI and bioengineering, now they say that for every year that you lose, you gain 4 months with the advancements in medical technology, and the fact that everyone's juicing today and everyone's running. By juice, I mean like actual drinking juice, not steroids. Yeah. But people jog and all that helps. And they say in the next 5 years, I think it's going to be 1-to-1, right? Every year you lose, you gain another year, and then you start getting into crazy world, which is like living as a 35-year-old till you're 70 years old in that kind of body. And of course, that's going to have grave ramifications. But again, for another time. Also, a person that is 70 years old, he, in theory, he has gray hair. This is representing a crown, as they say, like this crown of glory and dignity to someone's appearance, right? You look at someone 7 years old, there's a sense like, he's a gray fox. There's like a beautiful sense of someone with like that beautiful gray hair. I would love to have gray hair. There's a famous rabbi that he became the head of the Sanhedrin at a very young age. And he was very nervous that people are not going to take him seriously. And people are going to laugh at him because they're going to say like, no, this guy's not serious. He's still like a young buck. When he went to sleep and he woke up in the morning, he had a white hair and white beard. And he says, Hareni ki ben shivim shana. I am like a 7 years old. He's famously also inside the Haggadah. We read about him as well, Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah. So we'll come up with him in a few more months when we are reading the Passover Haggadah. Like we said earlier about the Zaken, right? Even at the 60s, it's Zekana Chochma, right? This is someone that manages still to acquire wisdom. This is why someone should rise before an old man as well. Someone that is 7 years old deserves respect, and it's not because of the money he has or the position he's had, just because he's been living this long and the wealth of his knowledge and his experience. We should want to and understand that is something that is deserving of our respect. Right. Now, also we should say that don't get to the place when you'll say, when I'm 70, I'll start doing all these things, right? There's like 70 is already the beginning of the end, so to speak, right? So you want to make sure that by the age of 70, you didn't reach this point of your life to now start living this good life. Rather, you reach the age of 70, realizing that you've been acting this way all along. Mm-hmm. Ben Shmonim Legvura, 80 for, what is 80? 80 for power.
Power.
Okay. So what is the strength that we have? What is the power that we have in 80? So this is, again, someone that's still thinking that he managed to get away from the evil inclination. Nevertheless, you still need your strength because you are still going to have to battle this evil inclination. And that's why we use the word gvura, power, like a lion, as we said in other chapters before. This you want to make sure you wake up in the morning like a lion and you could overcome your evil inclination. So make sure you strap yourself with strength and power at the age of 80. And we are told that there is Rabbi Yochanan, the high priest, even at the age of 80 years old, right? As in all these years, he was a high priest and the most pious man. Nevertheless, at the end of his days, he becomes corrupt and he becomes a Sadducee, and it doesn't end well for him. And this is an example that even at these later years, don't rest on your laurels and assume that you are out of the woods. But like the deer, you always must look behind you and see that the evil inclination is still there trying to take advantage of you. Ben Tishim Lasuach, 90 to stoop, right? So as if you're 90, you're stooped, you're bent over, you're typically your physical strength has completely abandoned you already at this point, right? Hopefully you still have your mental and intellectual capacities are still intact. However, this is definitely something, this is definitely a very, very old age. There's a famous story in the Gemara how one rabbi, Judah the Prince, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, asks Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta to come meet him. And he says, boulders have become mountains and, close distances have become very, very far. So once you become very old, it's very, very difficult to walk. And then he says, from 2 have become 3. This is famously I think this is repeated again with Golem and Bilbo in the Shire, as far as one of his riddles. But 2 that have become 3 are, I used to walk on 2 legs and now I walk with 3 legs because I have my cane. I think that's one of the questions that Golem asks him. I don't know if he attributes it to the Gemara though. I don't know if Sauron was allowing people to learn Gemara. And even short journeys at a young age, they take a very, very long time. Of course. So there's at the time, or at least still today, we don't have, or no one's immune from aging. And we have to remember that we have to take advantage of our youth. Again, some of this is becoming less relevant, which makes me very, very nervous. But again, for a different conversation. Uben mea keilu met ve'avar ubatel min haolam. Right? So 100 years old is one who died and passed away and has been negated from this world. So that's very depressing to think about it that way, because my grandfather's 100 years old. And with this kind of attitude and this kind of reading, it's as if I'm telling him, sorry, Dad, sorry, Grandpa, you're basically considered dead. Now, there is a sense where you're very old. So like, those things don't really matter anymore. But there's a sense when you are 100 years old, it's the other things of the world are not relevant to you anymore.
Right.
And it's time for you to really be focusing on, you are being removed from this world, but it's really time to focus on the next world. And while we spoke about the vestibule, the foyer, right, which is make sure you prepare yourself in the vestibules, because then you're going to go eventually into the banquet hall.
Yeah.
At the age of 100, this is the last final view of the mirror, right? The bow tie is set, the suspenders are on, you're about to go. So the focus would almost be, you could imagine time slowing down completely, which is these last few years are only foyer. I don't really need to have discussions about other stuff. I am now really starting to contemplate what that means. And when I asked my grandfather, Saba, are you excited at this age now for death, right? Like, I know you're very happy to be with your grandchildren, but is part of you excited? And he says, yes, I'm excited. I'm excited for the next phase. And there's a sense which is keilu met ve'avaru batel min haolam. It's, if you could put yourself in that mindset, it's as if it's over already. You no longer need to be worried about who was elected, or I joke around with my grandfather that you could shoplift now.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I'm like, Saba, you'll go into the store, you'll walk out. The guy will tell you, like, what are you doing? Just like mumble something and like slowly like walk out. No one's going to stop you. You could live your life. And it's sort of living your life unapologetically. Again, you're not mugging people right now, but the sense is that you are fully immersed
Focus
right now
on the next thing. Yeah.
And with God. And on that note, I'll let you run, Ben.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sorry for the rush at the end there.
It was only 40 years. Not at all. There's some other insights over here, ideas that like I skipped over, but maybe round 2 we'll go over it again. Next week we'll continue with chapter 6, the final chapter. Very, very exciting. Take care. Be well. You'll let me know if we're on next week or not.
Yeah, I will.
And take care.
You too. Thank you very much. All right.
I will stay on for another minute or two if anyone wants to join. Okay, let's look at some comments over here. Andrew, hello. Juicing hard. And he became a Sadducee. Sad face. Correct. It did not work out well. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the evening, and 3 legs at night? Is that the riddle that Golem asks? There's like the treasure, right, with the yolk and the egg. There's what brings down kings and mountains and stuff. That's time. And is this the quote that Golem asks? Oh, Andrew's joining me. Hello, Andrew.
How's it going?
Your connection. I'm good, thank God. You're lagging a little.
Yeah, I get you.
Am I right? Is that the riddle that he asks? What walks on 4, 2,
so.
and 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But now you know that Golem got it from Ben Bagbag.
Yeah.
How are you doing, buddy?
Good. Tired. Yeah. I have been eating a high protein, high carb diet, which makes you really sleepy.
Is this part of like a workout regimen?
Yeah. I don't know.
You gotta juice up.
Yeah. I think I just gotta start drinking coffee or something.
Your week has been successful though, I hope. Well, last week has been successful. Productive.
Last week. Productive. Yeah, a good bit. Oh, it's raining out here. Yeah, there's still stuff I need to do. But hey, we're getting through it.
Why are you home now?
How about you?
Andrew's lagging.
Well,
All right, that was not working well for Andrew. Hopefully he'll join back when there's a better connection. Oh, well, he looks to join back right now. Andrew.
what's popping? What's popping?
I'm good. I was asking why you're home.
Very long answer.
You were kicked out of school? You're taking a break from school? It's too hard.
I wasn't kicked out, but wasn't going too well either.
This must be very difficult for your parents.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But what does that mean? Like, at the end of the day, is that because I would assume it's not due to a lack of cognitive abilities, rather a lack of will to fully engage in school right now?
Yeah, I guess so.
I would also assume that not wanting to engage in school at the age when you're supposed to be dealing with school, and the fact that you still have time to engage here would mean that there are undergirding issues that are bothering you that are more fundamental.
Yeah.
I see. I would also venture to guess, based on our conversations, that those things are related to what am I supposed to be doing in my life in 2024, and also socially, what is my life supposed to look like? Difficult times. I know it feels like forever.
Well, I mean,
you don't have to share this if you don't want to right now, by the way.
Okay, I mean, I can. I don't, I don't care too much about my image. Yeah. Like being at UCLA, it's like I just have like no idea what to do. I don't know. But I mean, like, hey, getting half kicked out has kind of helped clear up what to do, I guess. Question mark.
I would assume that you were hinting towards this or that this might be a possibility for a while. Now that this actually happened, does this change, like, for your parents, as if like has the ball dropped, so to speak? Are they like, oh, this is serious? If earlier Andrew was telling us like he's not loving school, now this is like he's actually in our house right now driving our car.
I mean, I guess so. Yeah.
And aside from the fact of feeling like, great, I don't have to go to class today, which is like enjoyable, right? And I don't have to see that jerk that I always see when I'm walking down the hall. Are you feeling relieved, or is this scary, or both?
somewhat relieved. I mean, I'm somewhat relieved that, like, the ball has kind of finally dropped, and it's like it's all me now. It's like I'm not stuck in whatever expectation that people have for me. I mean, now that it's all me, and like, I think I should have had this realization or conversation like 2 years ago. It's kind of like I'm kind of worried about that.
Well, you're super young. I don't know if you have to be worried about that. Like, there's plenty of time to change things and course correct, so to speak. And course correcting doesn't mean going back to where you were originally. It can mean you end up in an ashram in India. My point of being, like, there's still plenty of time for many different things to manifest and happen in your life. The question is, are you going to take advantage of this time that you have, or do you want to be, is this quicksand? Because if it's quicksand, you might be standing at the surface right now, but slowly but surely you start getting sucked down and it's harder to get out of that. If it's just I'm out on the open road, so to speak, then great. Then that could be very, that could be very interesting. I also believe, and the only reason I'm mentioning parents right now is just because I'm assuming at your age, the fact that like they're also looking and watching has its own pressure built into it. And there's obviously like monetary expectations as well, right? Which is like, if you're not following suit with like the general plan of the house, right? I don't know if there's monetary ramifications for that, but have you, and that doesn't have to happen today if you just got home today, but is there a plan for you to sit down? And you can be like, well, Chezi, I'm always thinking about this. But now that you've actually made a move and you're quote unquote free, are you going to spend time and now try to figure out what that is that you want to do? Or at the very least, what I don't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing now. Yeah.
Kind of what you're doing now, like in your life, or kind of what you're doing right now, like as in this moment you're driving to a job interview?
Well, I already got a job.
Oh, wow.
In my life, yeah, that's like what I'm doing. I'm like seeing where I can transfer and whatnot. Yeah.
All right, you have the magic wand, right? It's yours right now. What do you do?
What, like you can change reality or something?
Yeah. Dream job, like what I'm saying, like you could, like, what would the move you do right now?
Dude, I have no idea what my dream job would be.
I always like to, by process of elimination, right? Not lawyer, not doctor, not teacher, not kindergarten teacher, not, like I'm saying, once you start doing that, it starts narrowing down, like, your options, so to speak, of like things that I definitely don't want to be dealing with. And then it's easier a little to focus on those things. Now, I would also say that during this transition period, it would be wise to still create yourself a schedule. Right? So you're saying you're eating this proteins and stuff like that's a workout. Like, I think a workout schedule is great, both because it actually does well for you. It's releasing endorphins. I'm saying it also puts you in a good state of mind, also working out that way. So it's important to do you. I would say study, as far as like religious studies, you have time, whether it's scripture or whether it's things like that, just immerse yourself a little in God's wisdom when taking, having time to ruminate about these things. Super important to show appreciation for parents. They're in a very sensitive time right now. I know it's hard to think about, but like for them, they're very nervous right now. What's happening with our son, right? And if I remember correctly, you're an only child, right? So this was the mission. Your mom, your dad got together, created this beautiful, amazing life. Our hopes are into him. We're working for him. Like, so there's a sense, and they're not going to be able to handle it. Even if they say like, yeah, it's okay, honey. You know, they want the best for you, obviously, even if they have a different understanding of what that best looks like. But it's important that you're sensitive to that. Like, oh, mom, get off my case. Like, I don't know if you want to be saying that right now, because like that's all she's going to be able to do is be on your case, whether she wants to or not. Like, she thinks she's being good. She thinks she's mothering by doing that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important to make sure that they understand and they feel your appreciation of that. You got to run to work. Do your thing, dude. A half Asian, half French man running in the rain. All right, Andrew. Let's all pray for Andrew, that he finds clarity and tranquility in his life. It says that there are 18 people watching on X. I don't even know what that means. Are they like watching this live on Twitter? Can they even comment if they're watching live on Twitter? Fascinating. All right, I'm going to give this. I'm going to give this another 5 minutes, and then I'm peacing out. So if anyone wants to join, feel free to join. Shalom, Sandy. Sandy, I think we're also going to postpone the Noahide class tomorrow. I was mentioning to well, it doesn't matter why. Either way, I don't think we're going to have it tomorrow, but I'll write on the group. Hello, Sandy. You were asking about, I want to know about the building framing.
No, that was Andrew's, where he was lots of interesting joists and pieces of wall, and I wondered if he was.
Gotcha. I think he was like in that. I think he was in his garage.
You have wise words. You have probably had a fairly good family structure and upbringing.
Yeah, I don't feel guilty about that. Obviously, I feel very blessed by that. But when you hear a lot of conversations and rando conversations or in TLC, it seems like a lot of people are coming from more complicated backgrounds. I was very fortunate to have a very, very lovely childhood. Best friends with all my siblings, very close with all of them, still in touch with all of them. We see each other very, very often. And that's the core family. I would say there's probably, from my grandfather that are living in Israel, there's just around like 140 of us, and we're all fairly close. Spend a lot of time together. On my father's side, if like I expand that bigger, like, great uncles and things like that, then we quickly reach like around 300 and more. And then my mom's side is already out of control. Yeah, nice. Very, very family oriented.
Nice. Thinking about.
I try not to talk about that too often, though.
Why?
I think it's not easy when you grow up and you don't have that, and I know how enjoyable it is to hear from someone that like they have that. I feel like it's sort of looking outside the window into someone, singing Christmas carols with his family, and you're outside in the snow. I'm not trying to be like people. Obviously,
you realize though that people think about that anyway.
Yes, I understand that, but if I publicize that and promulgate that constantly, I could understand how that could be, I don't know, salt, on wounds and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So that makes me think of Jacob and his woke stuff, because you can do too good a job at avoiding causing pain. Let's put it that way.
I mean, I'm not like denying it. If you ask me, like, did you have parents? I don't be like, no. I of course I will answer. It's if someone asks, I don't mind sharing. I'll share this example that other people could take on if they want to. My grandfather, may he live and be well, has a book called the Grandchildren's Book. And in the Grandchildren's Book, on Passover and on Purim, all children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, and great grandchildren are all need to come to my grandfather's house. And on not Passover, on Hanukkah. On Hanukkah, my grandfather gives out like a little bill, right? If you're 13, it's a certain amount. If you're over 13, it's a different amount. If you're married, it's another amount. And you get it from my grandfather. You shake his hand. You walk over to my grandmother. You give her a kiss, and then you sign your name in the Grandchildren's Book. And everyone could see the progression of their signatures. So you could see, 1980, Chezi has like a little squiggle, and then slowly but surely it turns into, your name, your signature. And then on Purim, you get to select any book you want, and my grandparents will buy you the book. But and then also you have to sign your name inside. But now everyone sets an appointment and comes with their family, and it's a whole experience. And you see my grandfather sit down, and the grandchildren get to see this, and they get to put their name inside. So there's a whole sense of community and tradition and fellowship. So those are things that if one takes on and starts cultivating and building that, they send a very, very strong message to the rest of the family. How important it is, how important tradition is.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. That's a great tradition, and that's I hope that gets continued.
Yeah.
I was thinking about your grandfather when you were talking about about 100 years old. Because I have my instructions to live to be 100. So, I could hit an age where I can give myself permission to just simply slow down and not really care as much about stuff. But I don't think it's interesting that I got to go back and look at what the section says that you were reading.
About which age? The last 40 years we sort of sprinted through.
You sprinted, yeah. Especially the sprint part for sure. But I was also just like when I called in, I was also just thinking about your conversation with Andrew and how hard it is to unstick. I'll say myself, but others feel it too, to unstick from certain things.
What do you mean by unstick?
Repetition. And if it's not repetition, it's the lack of ability to form repetition. It's kind of like two ends of the same stick, I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, go ahead and ask. It's okay.
I was going to say that in an earlier Mishnah we read, Im lo achshav ematai, if not now, when? Right? And that's very much like you're never going to get out of that repetition, stuck in that loop. You have to decide today's the day.
Right. And and I wouldn't have come up with that saying, but listening to the listening to the piece from Ethics of the Fathers, listening to your conversation with Andrew, the fact that I'm homesick and this is the second time in 2 years that I've been home with, I used to just call it stress flu. You know, when something would happen, your stress hits a certain peak point and you got no reserves left and you're just like, okay, that's it, I'm sick, you know, and you got nothing left to fight it off. I've been listening to a lot of interesting stuff because I'm homesick. Staying homesick is super hard for me because of, because in a way of some of the questions you were asking Andrew. How do you make a decision? How do you know what is a decision? How do you know that you're allowed to make the decision? Do you have experience making decisions? All those kinds of things. That's been a big area of struggle for me in life. Anytime that I function strictly off instinct and have the ability to jump into something without thinking about it, I'm far better able to function than if you ask me to think ahead and decide how I'm going to plan my way through it. And it comes from some of the reasons that you might find yourself holding back sharing some of the good in life.
My kids have two things that I drill into them that was drilled in by my father and his father before him. One is sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila, which is the end of action starts with forethought, okay? As in, you're first going to think, then you're going to do, and be aware of your surroundings. And my kids know whether it's always, and I tell them, I'm like, sof ma'aseh, and they say, b'machshava tchila. I'm like, if they made a mistake, if they ran, I'm like, you have to plan ahead. You have to always, doesn't matter if it's a play date, if it's a running thing, what is the plan? Where are you going? And in order to be able to plan ahead, be aware of your surroundings. Where are you? What are the components? What are the tools in front of you? Only then will you be able to discern and make the decision of how to take the next step. Obviously, they're going to fail at their age, which is totally fine. But having them understand that is the prerequisite. You always have to be taking those things into consideration. So you're running up the slide in the park right now. A, it just rained, so don't run up because you might slip. 2, you're running up and you're not looking. There's other kids over there. You're going to knock her down. So if you want this excursion to the park right now to be a complete fail, you could run in eyes closed, not thinking at all of the fact that on the way here you saw 17 puddles. So you remember that you decided to jump in them and your shoes are soaking wet. There are ramifications. Aside from the fact that you destroyed your shoes, they're also wet right now. So I sound like a broken record sometimes, but that is something that I constantly am telling them so they could strengthen that muscle where it will become second nature for them. When they walk into the room, my dad would use also from a Batman comic, he would say, Batman always has a plan B for his plan C, right? There's a contingency to the contingencies. Now, you don't want to be a neurotic person walking into a room like, how do I escape? Who's my enemy? Right? You'll make yourself crazy. But there is a sense to take a moment to see where you are, when you are, how you are, before you open up your mouth or make other moves.
I call that place permission. I have a very hard time giving myself permission because I wasn't reminded of those things much. And so I love what you just shared because that's what you want to give your kids. You want to teach them what that looks like in a simple frame when they're young like yours are, so that when they get to adult life and things come up, not only do they have a framework for it, but they know they have permission to act on it and to follow all those steps. And that's, I mean, I know there's not perfection in what you're teaching here just because it's Jewish. I do see that there's patterns and things that I watch in some of the people that I get to talk about too around here. There's probably also people whose families are not in good state. But the principle there, what you were just walking through with the slide and the whole scenario with the pedals and stuff, that is so important, and it sounds incredibly simple. But, when I look and I think, okay, I jumped on here listening to Andrew because he's at the beginning of life. And my mind is immediately going to, oh, at his age, I had 6 months left to finish a teaching degree that now, if you want to have it, takes 6 years to do. 6 months, 6 years, huge difference. There's some people who've said, well, why don't you go and do this or that? Oh, like go and be a fill-in teacher because they're taking housewives. They're desperate. Nobody wants to do this anymore. Everybody's pulling their hair out because it's gotten horrendous. And I'm like, yeah, I know it has. I've talked to teachers during the last few years. They were doing one side of the COVID years, and I was doing the other. They weren't allowed to kind of gather, and they weren't allowed to a lot of stuff. And I was kind of impelled into 200 people crammed into 60 by 30 feet some days, and you kind of go, it's all insane. You get through. And one of the things about jobs and working I've been thinking about the last couple of years is how terribly, when I went back to work, and I took a job in retail at minimum wage with a BA and almost teaching degree behind me, I beat myself up, something terrible about it. And I listened to some of the young guys here and I'm thinking, geez, there's so much potential for play in life, and I don't mean play like kids playing. I mean, that there's time, there's 1,000 decisions between them and me, age-wise that could happen. And I'm like, just be brave, just do it. Just, look at the thing you like when you were talking about, here's how you do an elimination process. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is just so, it's simple, it's wise, it's logical. It walks people who don't do that through the pattern,
Well,
and Pirkei Avot, all of the different things, they do that over and over in a repetitive pattern. Like that age thing said, from 5 years to 100 years, you have a whole lot of stages you're going to pass through, and everyone gives you opportunities, so. And my major achievement in the last week was realizing on my day off last Thursday that I was sick and not just struggling, and that I was going to make myself call in the next day and not push myself to go in. And the reasons I was choosing to do that, and that actually choosing to take the step and say, no, I'm sorry, your health is more important than pushing through the next 2 or 3 days and making other people sick and making yourself worse. And I just have 3 more days coming up tomorrow through Thursday that were supposed to be my 3 days off after my work week of 4 days. And I have called and canceled 2 appointments and rescheduled, actually 3, and rescheduled. 1 definitely, and 2 possibly. They're all canceled. They're probably all canceled, but one of them has a definite date and time. And I've let my son's group home know, because I'm not going to make him sick either.
I think obviously
That's huge.
there are considerations that I'm not privy to, obviously, with if I'm using those days and I was going to use them some other time, but I think
it's just the way my days off and the work schedule went for the next.
You got to take care of your body, right? If you don't, then next week it'll just be worse, right? So I'm a very bad eater. I ultimately end up doing intermittent fasting just because, and that's why one of the reasons why I love my partner He very much knows, he'll come into the office and be like, he'll just buy me food and put it in front of me because he just knows. And he'll talk to clients. So I have a shopping day tomorrow with the client, and he wrote on the schedule that he just wrote on. He's like, at this hour, I want you to take them out to eat. He's like, just get them whatever they want, but get something for yourself as well. Now, the reason he says this is because it could be like 3:00 in the afternoon and I start feeling this like hungry headache. And I'm like, I'm just going to finish this email, but I don't take care of my body. And then I have like a headache for like an hour and I have a migraine and I have to sit down, and then I come home and it's annoying for my kids. And that was just me being silly and stupid. And I think, like you mentioned, having a tradition that is regimenting your life, so to speak, or at least giving you models of what that looks like. So,
Yep.
You're going to hear it. Jacob is constantly telling the young guys, if you're like, go get married. But his attitude is like, thrust yourself into life, where then you're going to be forced to take on certain things, right? You got married and you have a kid. Well, now you have to have a job. And then it's less about, but I thought I was going to be a famous artist, or I thought I was going to be a dancer. That's nice. There needs to be food on the table right now because little Timmy needs to eat. And if you realize it's about little Timmy eating, then it's going to be less about, I'm going to be a dancer. It doesn't mean you have to negate yourself and not self-fulfill, but it creates a new sense of a hierarchy. It focuses on what's actually important in life.
Yep.
Again, I get very nervous about this, just with the advancements of, of technology. But you mentioned that, this is how I raise my kids, and I'm giving them a lot of tools. I believe we're the last generation where I could take the tools from my father and still apply them to my son at a certain extent. And I always use the example of patience. My father was still using the term patience the way his father was using it, and then also taught me, like, you have to be patient right now. It's not fair for me to require the same level of patience from my kids just because the world is faster. Right? Me saying like, well, you're going to have to wait. Answers, maybe you'll know the answer tomorrow, but there's Google. So why would I wait for tomorrow to have the answer? Or why would I wait to hear, like, there's things that I might say, be patient. And he might be like, I don't need to be patient. You're just slow.
I can tell you one answer to that, but finish.
Well, I mean, it's a sense where if you could have a 3D printer in your house today,
yep.
It starts becoming very complicated to tell your kid, like, well, you just have to wait. Why? It used to be you just have to wait because life doesn't just give you the things you want immediately. But if I have a 3D printer, it's not I just need to wait. It means that you just can't afford the thing that gives it to me right away, potentially. And if your answer is I don't want to give that for you, then there's another reason you have to give. Why are you not giving me something that can give it to me right away? Well, it's silly for you to have something that allows you to build your own toys. Is it silly? I don't know if it's silly or not. And maybe it's giving you a lot of power. Maybe it means you need to be a little more mature. But, the fact that there's the internet and the fact that like the kid could order the tickets right now and there's Prime and I could order it right away. At some point it becomes negligent. Wait, Dad, did you not order the tickets already today? No, I was going to do that yesterday. But then everyone else ordered it today. So we missed the seats we wanted because you were still in this mindset of like, well, things take time. So that's just an example of things that as the world changes, start becoming less relevant. But that's still very much my framework. So you have to sort of see how you tweak those things, or at the very least, not to be so hard on myself on how I'm raising them. And if some of those tools are no longer relevant or no longer as relevant.
Patience as a tool will always be relevant. It has to be. And you've talked about it actually in some of your streams in terms of your business and dealing with clients. That's one thought. When my son was little, poor Joshua, I inherited my dad's humor. So he'd be, bugging me for candy at the grocery line and, getting into the whining stage of, but I want. And, at the point I'd get frustrated, I really did this. I mean, I have at least developed a further generation of very warped sense of humor that actually loves humor. But I'd turn to him and I'd say to him, but Joshua, I never said you couldn't want it. I just said you couldn't have it right now. And he'd look at me like, what? And at least, and that moment of pause, that in between space, you get out of the whining and you get into the, but honestly, the first thing I thought of, which I'm saying last, was I remember reading somewhere about the value of being bored. And it was somebody that was writing from the arts perspectives that said, being bored is one of the, one of the key elements of creativity. It's in boredom that you give your mind space, and being bored they were saying, is actually a vital place in terms of creativity. So
that too, I would say, but how long can you run that experiment in a modern world where you're going to say like, I think this is good for you, Billy. He's like, great. But I just want to go to my friend's house for play dates then, because I can't handle this. And like everyone else around me is not doing this though. So there's practice that you're saying like is something I should try. Maybe let's try those on Fridays between like 1 and 1:30, because
you keep it in your back pocket and you pull it out for the 5 minutes of need that show up in any given day. Like, I mean, I've been laying around my apartment for a week. I'm really bored. I am on here, but I'm really bored. And I'd like to go back to work. But I'm not going to, because sometimes the choice of, do I deal with my boredom or do I think about other people? That comes into play too. I used to have to call my grandmother once a week because I was patient and because I didn't have a choice. And I was very bored, talking to her. But half an hour, I had to commit to half an hour. My parents made me, and sometimes every single thing we do, like we have trouble with keeping kids at the job. They haven't learned how to be bored. They haven't learned how to occupy themselves in the middle of a repetitive task. That means they have to keep the physical here and keep the, the mental here and just keep it all going.
I mean, but they also have their phone in their hands, so they're not going to do that.
They're not allowed to use the phone at work. They get in trouble and then they get mad and then they quit and leave. Who are they going to be in 10 years? I don't know.
That's a very good question. I mean, I'm a fairly strict father. My kids have no screen time besides Friday. Can't watch any, there's no TV. I mean, like if they have like homework or something on the computer, they could do that, but there's no such thing. There's definitely homework that needs to be done. And there's definitely there's some creative work that needs to be done in the house every day. And very much responsibility. Like you're going to throw your clothes. I realize that you, on the way to the bathroom, all your clothing managed to come off of your body and they're all inside out. So you're going to take all this up. You're going to flip it the right way. Or I'm going to tell them, or mom's not going to, I'm going to put them in the wash. I'm just not flipping them the right way. And then you're going to get them in the morning and they're still going to be flipped that way. And so this is annoying for them, but they realize that this is something that they need to take on. And I tell them constantly, you get more freedom once you take on more responsibility. This is a dictatorship right now. This is my house and it's my rules, okay? Or our house and our rules. But I say, you want to be able to do something, take on more responsibility. Then
tell them thank you from me, because the more you do that with them, the less likely they are to become the 20 to 30-year-olds who are trying 10 to 20 things on in the 6-room change room at work and leaving them either all over the floor inside out or bothering to take the time to hang them up inside out. And I'm
so I will son already in bed, all cuddled, and then I noticed that the playroom wasn't clean. I'm like, out of bed, come down, go do this. And it's always, I know it's difficult to you. I will help you. I will sit down and do it with you. You're not alone in the wilderness, but this has to happen because, and I explained to them, I tell them, Abba is upset right now and making you do this. And remember, Abba made you and loves you. Yeah. Now imagine I'm just any other random person. Why would I be okay with you behaving this way? You're not protected by the shield of love that I have. I'm like, and you have to realize, like, when you behave this way, like that, you're chipping at that, and you don't want to chip at that. You have to realize that the world out there, this is a test. This is where you get to try these things out. But in the real world, if you're going to talk back to someone like that, they're not gonna play around with you. Jason, hello, sir. Can you relate this to writing the Torah by hand versus copying it? I'm not sure what he's talking about. So you could expand, you could join, or you could just expand. What time is it? Oh, wow.
You need to watch. Don't let us talk to you too long either, because you've been yawning. What time is it there?
11:30.
Yeah.
It's late.
Food and rest.
I want to see if I could answer Jason's comment if he clarifies. If you clarify, Yason. That's how you say Jason in Hebrew. Yason. Yeah. I don't know if you heard. I mentioned in before you got on that, but I thought you might be hearing that. I think I'm gonna postpone the Nohai class to next week, chapter 12 and 13. In reference to technology, earlier in a fast-paced society, you don't have to answer that though. Can this relate to reading the Torah by hand versus copying it? No, you still have to write the Torah by hand. And there's a whole sense also just writing the Tetragrammaton requires going to a ritual bath. So there's a whole sequence over there. Like in India, the kids copied the hand by hand instead of having a printer. I thought it was very special. Yeah, so that's going to continue happening. And that's also built into the tradition and in the commandments of how that's done for now. I think all these traditions are going to have to handle the I advise people to watch this Joe Rogan episode with this futurist, Kurzweil. And the end is a little frustrating because Joe is trying to challenge him with a question that seems like Mr. Kurzweil is not fully understanding or not internalizing. But this is something that I speak to rabbis here. And this is a point of not tension, but Jacob doesn't necessarily believe that technology is going to advance in this way. Yosef has sort of been a little gray about it. And if I'm not representing his position well, I'm sorry. But I believe that once you could start living much longer in a younger body, or once you could start playing with your genetics, human beings change. We will be a different kind of human, right? If I could live, if the way I look at my life right now, this whole thing we just read, this Mishnah, right, is between 5 to 10, 5 to 100. What if it's between 5 to 300, right? What does that mean? What does that mean towards marriages? What does that mean towards relationships? What does that mean towards educating? What does that mean towards society? And the Torah is written for humans. Even if it's eternal, I believe it's eternal for humans. If humans are no longer humans, right? If all of us tweaked our IQ to 200 and we could all have super skin that I can handle all temperatures and I no longer need food, then the way I relate to nature is different. Because of the way I relate to God is different. And then the question is halakha still relevant to people that are completely different? And not just like, oh, well, then we had the internet, now we have the internet. If we psychologically and physically are different, what are the ramifications then? If I could read your mind, right? Whether it's because we are now sharing some sort of telepathic link or just because I have an AI that lets me know based on your microaggressions, what you're talking about, what are the ramifications to speech, thought, conversation, dialogue? I just tuned in, by the way, so I might miss something, so I can go back and listen so you don't have to repeat the stuff.
That's okay.
No, what we're talking about is a little less. I wasn't talking about any of this when we were doing our class. I'm just talking about this now. But I am, at this note, I'm going to retire.
Mhm.
Um,
And can I add a final comment on Jacob on Ethan's question? Technology, typing and handwriting are very different. And in the writers' communities that I hang around with, we're constantly talking about some of those questions and points. Also in the artists, because you can make digital art versus, versus hand-created art. And both have a place. And even now with, I think they dropped cursive writing here educationally 5-10 years ago, maybe, and they're bringing it back in. But they're talking more in terms of calligraphy when they're talking about it. And I'm thinking, okay, so yeah, however we may change in the next so many years, I think halakha is always important. It will always be relevant in some respects. If you're talking about the handwritten versus the typed and some kind of place where people will see or experience it, that's one thing. But the halakha itself, the existence of what it actually is and conveys, I think that's eternal. And yeah, I mean, if you think of God in terms of the constant argument about the being and becoming and the what is he, the one and the many and everything. Well, from whatever that is and from the farthest distance of what we could possibly imagine that it means, he still made us. And if we're on a long journey to becoming something different, he still made us, and there will be some consistency from that beginning point.
That's true. I mean, he made us, and then he regretted it during the flood. He said, like, these guys are out of control. I mean, he promised not to do that again, obviously.
I had those moments with my children too.
Right. The Gemara gives like these cases where you could see them trying to stretch as far as they can with their imagination. They give this case of a woman that goes into a ritual bath, yet still gets pregnant. And they give an example of a elephant that eats a piece of straw, I believe, and then from its backside, a basket comes out. And it gives an example of a person that could hold pens in each one of his fingers and could flip his fingers while he's writing, and he could write a tremendous amount. And that was an example of they are articulating some sort of printer, or they're articulating some sort of machine, or they are articulating IVF, right? And this was like the limits of what their imaginations could say. Or Maimonides 1,000 years ago talks about if you could imagine like a flying metal chariot in the sky, right, which would be a plane. And in the 1500s, there's sages that talk about the Tower of Babel was built as a launching pad to build a spaceship to avoid the flood and to get to the moon, right? So, my canary in the coal mine to rabbis locally is I'm trying to tell them that it's time to dust off those pens and start thinking big again. As we enter a world of digital sages, right? If ChatGPT number 35 is shown to show almost no error with regards to halakha verdicts, right? Should we now ask the computer over a rabbi? Would it be negligent to not ask the computer over the rabbi? I get the answer right away. I get it with all the context. I get it relevant to me. And I've heard rabbis say that maybe for like simple things like that, it would be okay to ask the computer. But then for more specific things, you would speak to the rabbi. But that's only because the rabbi doesn't realize that what he thinks is more specific or what he thinks is more complicated is something that currently the AI won't be able to comprehend. But I believe that's not the case.
I listened to a Noahide class yesterday from the Noahide Society of Canada. I forget who there was several talks, several rabbis, but one of them was going through the history of the rabbis and answering some, those kind of questions where like,
I know it's not as good as our class. I know. It's okay, Sandy.
Okay, I'm trying not to say that because
I'm joking. They're all great, to each his own.
Yeah, I did write something in because I'm like, I've heard this story and I know what the answer is that, and he wasn't getting there to the person's question. So I'm like, but why I was thinking of it today with that comment is, it's kind of like my answer to the halakha. The AI was not 5, and the AI might live well past 100, and the AI hasn't studied through that long period of time through the various rabbis and formed the appreciation of not just what you learn from each one, but that element of respect, like your grandfather's book. So in terms of if I was to give you an answer to that question, that's your canary. My ex used to call me a canary in the coal mine too, so I don't know what he meant by that. But so I'll just kind of ping back there. Yeah, there is the if you just need the correct answer, you might be fine with just leaping into, so plug in the AI and let her run. But I always want to know what you do with the other component parts. And some of them are slightly intangible and not easy to plug in between the rabbis, the history of the rabbis, being able to picture an airplane in the, Middle Ages. Like, it's not just a piece of informational fact that you share with me. There's the entire you say some things with the weight of time you've spent learning it in the way that you share it. And the AI, if it's going to be able to step into that place, would have to be in a position in the historic community that is what all those things are, that it still stays somehow connected to those important pieces that aren't just information.
Unfortunately, while that sounds like a tall order right now, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Again, I could be very wrong, of course, and I'm in no way an expert about this, but I see it being a wild ride.
Very likely. Just like the rest of life, which is why you probably need sleep.
That's true, but like I was saying, that the 6-year-old or the 70-year-old, there's a sense where they have enough wisdom so they could start trying to map on what future is going to look like based on that. And I think, like, me based on my wisdom, it would be silly for me to try to map what's going to be, because the changes are so novel, so great, so exponential, where again, it really is a new world out there.
And it's going to need rabbis willing to engage in the world that you're like. If you ever become a rabbi, that's probably something that you would feed into it the same way you do in your current occupation. You would have that interactive engagement. There's got to be some out there who are capable, interested, encouraged, can see the point of it all.
Yeah, you just have to go through now you're an outlier and potentially like, oh, don't take this person seriously, right? You have to wait for there to be a critical mass. To be fair, I'm on a group, a discussion group, private right now for these reasons.
I think up once before in a different context, and if you did, and I'm correct about that, cautions to what you say, because I wondered the last time.
It's a group with Yosef is in that group as well.
Okay.
No, and we're
Nice.
talking
Different group.
with it's a discussion with different rabbis, academics, all Orthodox, but with the questions of halakha, the future relationship with Christians, Muslims, and trying to speak in a, again, like in this, the way I speak here or in the TLC would be considered at times very controversial in my community. I'm very careful. I try to be very careful with what I'm saying to know that I'm not speaking out of school. However, it is still quite jarring for a lot of people to talk about these things and really have a discussion of how you move forward, what's the future look like. So I'm in this group, which again needs to be more private, just because if those conversations came out prematurely, it could cause drama and tension for some of these rabbis, right? Some of these rabbis teach in other schools, and what they're discussing with us is not necessarily what they could be teaching in their school at this time. And that takes time.
Yeah, it does. And drama's not a good thing. Well,
a little drama's fun.
It's fun. It's not necessarily a good thing. I mean,
that's true.
I was commenting in Jacob's Calvinism's Calvinist section about in my time and place in former church network, which I still attend. How does that make it former? Whatever. I may ping you a question that was on something yesterday that I looked at. I was always that person, just kind of, always on the edges. I thought I was on the edges, always asking the questions, always being that, well, what about this? Or why don't we that? Or how come? Or the one just actually saying, these are the things we are very careful of, because these are the things that are, And I think a lot of that kind of drama went down really well where I was in that community. And today, though, I'm watching some of the outflow of some of the drama that's kind of had trickle-down effect to people that are super conservative there or want to be super conservative. And so I like that you're saying you're having conversations with Orthodox people about unorthodox things. I think that's a good place to be. Anyways, you need to sleep.
Yeah, on that note,
I probably need tea. Yeah.
Feel better. Have a speedy recovery.
Thank you. And thank you for the time. And tomorrow being off is probably great.
You got it.
Yeah,
bye. To all watching, thank you for participating, whoever participated. I hope you guys found this enjoyable, helpful in any way. Take care. Stay strong. Bye.